There is a podcast that lies between the imagination of two simple-minded earthlings. Travel with these two longtime friends, Jimbo and 80s E, as they attempt to explore the fifth dimension. Follow along with them as they take the key and unlock the door to the vast space between shadow and substance. This podcast is one of trivia, of insight, and of sounds and ideas from one of the greatest television shows ever produced. You are embarking on a timeless journey. There is your signpost up ahead. You are entering the tragedy of cinema's Twilight Zone.
It's been said that science fiction and fantasy are two different things. Science fiction, the improbable made possible. Fantasy, the impossible made probable. What would you have if you put these two different things together? Well, you'd have an old man named Ben who knows a lot of tricks most people don't know, and a little girl named Jenny who loves him, and a journey into the heart of the Twilight Zone.
All right, guys, welcome back to the Tragedy of Cinema's The Twilight Zone series. I'm your host, Jimbo.
And I'm your co-host, 80Z.
80s, happy Memorial Day.
Happy Memorial Day to you. We want to send a shout-out especially to all those who have served our country, honoring those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. And that's what this day is, a special recording day for us. And I want to commemorate and honor them as well as family and friends who have passed on. It's kind of tradition, you know, to memorialize those who have passed on before us. So
yeah, we got to remember freedom isn't free. So
no, it's not.
We want to thank all the people that have served this country and are still serving this country, no matter where you are in the world. We think about you, we love you, and we pray for you. So
yes, sir. All right, moving on to our episode at hand. It's entitled "The Fugitive."
Boy, we're gonna have fun with this because one of us likes this, one of us don't. So, of course, in typical Tragedy of Cinema fashion.
Yeah, that should become easily apparent as we move along. But the episode is entitled The Fugitive, and it's from Twilight Zone season number 3, episode number 25. This one comes in with an IMDb rating of about 7.5. And the original air date was March the 9th, 1962. And you know what time it is, folks. This is our favorite segment in the program. The segment entitled, On This Day in History. All right, so for On This Day in TV and film history, and then we got a little sports trivia mixed in. We go all out for this. March the 9th, 1962 is the date of the episode. So March the 9th, let's go all the way back to 1946. Let's talk about one impressive baseball player. His name was Ted Williams. And on this date in 1946, he was actually offered $500,000 to play in the Mexican Baseball League. But he refuses. So good on Ted Williams, who might have lost him to the Mexican Baseball League in 1946. And then for March 9th, 1954, a few years later, the first local color television broadcast. It was entitled, the call letters were WNBT-TV, and this was out of New York City. It made its first color debut in 1954. All right, moving along several decades to March 9th, 1981, one Dan Rather. Remember Dan Rather, Jimbo?
Was it CBS or ABC?
He was CBS,
NBC?
You got it right.
Yeah.
He was the first primary anchor of the CBS Evening News in 1981.
You know what? I kind of missed those guys. I mean, we grew up with those guys. Now it's just stupid.
Yeah, we've got all kinds of media now. People
Right.
get their news from all different sources now. But yeah, it was mainly the 3 channels that we had back in the day.
We're old, Eric.
Yeah, times have changed. So 7 years later, on March 9th, 1988, actress Audrey Hepburn is appointed as the UNICEF Special Ambassador, or it was also called the Goodwill Ambassador of 1989. So she was honorarily given that title in 1988. And I think we covered that a while back when we covered an Audrey Hepburn series. We talked about her contributions to UNICEF. She was really known for that. I mean, they were almost like parallel. UNICEF and Audrey Hepburn went together. I've only got one birthday for this date. So on March 9th, 1943, American chess player and world champion from 1972 through 1975, one Bobby Fischer. He was born in Chicago, Illinois, and he died on, it doesn't give the date, but he died in 2008. But he was born March the 9th, 2008.
Did you ever see that movie, Searching for Bobby Fischer?
I haven't.
It's a good movie.
I remember, seeing clips and trailers and stuff for it, but I don't think I've ever seen it all the way through.
Really good movie.
So back to our episode at hand. We already talked about the original air date. Let's talk about some production costs for this episode. This one comes in right around our benchmark at $48,012.12 for this entire episode. Dates of rehearsal, only one date of rehearsal, March the 21st, 1961 for this episode. And dates of filming, there are 3, March the 24th, 25th, and 26th of 1961. And just to give you a quick overview on how the recording and filming took place, day 1 was the interior of the Gann apartment and the hallway, and that was done on stage 7. If you remember in the episode, a portion of that episode takes place in an apartment. Day 2 was the interior of Ben's room and interior of the Gann apartment, stage 7. And then day 3 was the exterior of the city street on lot number 2. Now, it's interesting they don't give the date of filming for the opening scene. I think there's some trivia about that, but the opening scene on the baseball diamond and all that stuff doesn't give any specifics on when that was filmed, but maybe we'll get some trivia as we move along. Jimbo, tell us about the cast of this episode.
All right. It's not a really big cast. Sure, there are a bunch of kids at the beginning of this episode, but I didn't go into detail on all those. So one of the main characters in this is J. Pat O'Malley. He played Old Ben. You may recognize his voice because he's been in a lot of Disney's voiceovers. So he was in Alice in Wonderland, where he played Tweedledee and Tweedledum, and some other voices there. He was also in 101 Dalmatians, The Jungle Book. So this guy had one of those, voices that are desired to be in like animation. Very, very well done. Then you had the little girl, Susan Gordon. She played Jenny. I couldn't really find too much about her acting experiences, but she did say that this was probably her favorite acting role that she did in television and movies because she got to play a twin, and she got to marry or go off with a Prince Charming and live happily ever after, which we'll talk about. But not only that, she said she always had wanted to meet Rod Serling. And she was sad that she never got to because on the first day of shooting, when they were outside on the baseball field or whatever, that she had come down with a touch of either sunstroke or the flu. And as they were taking her out in a stretcher, Rod Serling was walking in. So she didn't get to meet Rod. And I thought that was very interesting because I always thought Rod was on the set the entire time. Did you?
I got the impression that he was always kind of hanging around, but I had read somewhere where he shot a lot of his monologues offset.
Right, but I mean, I didn't know if he was there, kind of like the director and producer, watching to make sure everything was going on. So I thought that was really cool. Then you had Nancy Culp. Oh, the old Mrs. Gann. She's
probably the most recognizable
as Miss Jane Hathaway from the Beverly Hillbillies.
Yep, that's right.
Man, I loved her back in the day for that. A little bit about Nancy Culp. I thought this was very interesting. So in 1944, during World War II, she actually left the University of Miami to join the U.S. Naval Reserve, achieving the rank of lieutenant junior grade. And she earned several decorations and awards for her service. So I thought on Memorial Day, what a better way to recognize her than for her service. And did you notice that she kind of reminded me of Miss Hannigan from Annie in this role?
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the parallel there.
Yeah. So, but she was actually the aunt of Jenny in this. So then you had Wesley Lau. He was the first pursuer, if you will. He starred in the movie Alamo with John Wayne. Boo! I know how American of me. Then you had Paul Tripp. He played the second pursuer. Russ Bender, he was the doctor. He had a uncredited role in the great science fiction classic, The War of the Worlds. You had Stephen Talbot, who played Howie Gutliff. Eric, do you know who Howie Gutliff was?
I do not. Please tell me.
He played on the television show for 56 episodes, Leave It to Beaver, as Gilbert Gates.
Okay, yeah. So, I know who he is now.
Yeah. And then you had Johnny Iman. He was the pitcher at the beginning of the episode. So that is your small cast and crew for this episode.
All right. Thank you, Jimbo. I neglected to mention the director and the writer for this episode. So the director would be Richard L. Baer for this episode, and it was written by Charles Beaumont, the episode's writer. So let's talk about a plot for this episode quickly. Little Jenny wears a brace on her leg. Her best friend, an old man named Old Ben, brightens her life by performing magic, including turning anything into anything he wants. One day, two men show up looking for Old Ben, and Jenny asks if they are policemen. Not exactly. Old Ben evades them and confesses to Jenny that he's from another planet, a fugitive, but not a criminal. And that's from Bob Beecher from IMBD. So if we launch off into our episode here, this is probably one of the bright spots, and we'll talk about how this scene comes to be is, kids playing baseball on a diamond. It kind of takes you back. It looks
let's not talk about our baseball years.
We don't want to talk about our baseball records.
Don't even know if we ever won a game, did we?
But it can. No, I don't think we did. It reminds you of the movie Sandlot to me, kind of.
Yeah.
It's an old baseball field, and the kids are playing. And one thing that really sticks out right from the very beginning is there's an old man playing with a bunch of kids. And it turns out that you'll come out to find out quickly that he and Jenny are best friends, and old Ben has special powers. And that becomes very evident because he comes up and cranks a home run
out of the atmosphere.
Very early in the episode. So the setting is just a small town neighborhood, and it's focusing on a kind, imaginative girl. That's who Jenny is. We meet her. And we know she has a very severe limp, and we will just jumping ahead, but we'll meet her very stern guardian here before too long. Then after the baseball game, Ben knocks the cover off the ball. Really, they decide they're going to play another game called Spaceman, and I wanted to ask you, what do you thought of the alien costume in the Spaceman game? Was it horrible, but not too horrible as the kids requested?
Well, let me just say, I've covered a lot of B movies with my dad, Art Toast, so I didn't think it looked bad. I thought it looked pretty good.
That one was up there. It was kind of for the era, I guess. Yeah, it fit the episode. But they play Spaceman. That was like the second game that they played. And there's, Jenny's basically I think she might be the only girl here in the episode around a bunch of boys, and they don't want her to take any lead commander role in the game of Spaceman. And so after we move from the game that they play, we discover that Ben has this ability. He's obviously otherworldly because we've just seen him crank a home run, and he looks like he's 80-something years old. And that's not something typically that 80-year-olds do. But then we notice that he has this shape-shifting ability. He's otherworldly, if you will. There's something different about Ben. He seems to be kind and a generous kind of guy. And we'll talk about just, I don't know, from the get-go, I'm just going to throw it out here right here. There are some lines, one of them being like, "Hey, Ben, don't be a dirty old man," early on, that one of the kids say. For today's date and time, it's going to be a little cringeworthy. I'll just introduce that up front, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later and unpack some of that stuff. But anything else stick out to you, Jimbo? I got a basic 3-point outline here.
Well, something about Jenny. She's wearing one of those braces. It's only on one leg, but it kind of reminds me of Forrest Gump. If you remember Forrest Gump at the beginning where he's running and the braces fall off, that's what it looks like if people haven't seen this episode.
So after the spaceman game, Rod gives his introduction, and it's interesting. He melds the two in his introduction. This is science fiction and fantasy. That's a main point that he's trying to drive home with this episode. And so then we go to commercial, and then we open back up. And this is where, it starts to get even a little more cringeworthy, and I'll tell you why. So we have kind of an inciting incident in the second act, and Jenny's frequently visits the old man, and obviously we know that they are friends, and he seems to be magical. We talked about how he can kind of shape shift, and there must have been some inkling that he could heal like injuries and stuff, because Jenny asks him, Ben, tell me something. You do so many things. How come you don't make my leg well? And Ben's response is, well, because then I wouldn't have the fun of carrying you. So right there, kind of, it gets a little weird for me, I guess.
Well, I don't,
but
I don't look at it that way there.
I'm sure you don't.
No, I'm just saying, he's trying to make her feel better because she has a disability. That's the way I look at it.
I get the perspective of why it was written, and I'm sure it was written. I want to give people the benefit of the doubt, and I don't want to go too deep into this, but the history of Hollywood and everything, and child actors, and you can go into, all of that, the history, even today, that a lot of the things that are coming out today, children were not protected, and that's the bottom line. In the early days,
you can even go all the way back to the Wizard of Oz, and Judy Garland wasn't protected from the Munchkins.
Would have been point and example number one. But what makes it a little more uncomfortable for me is he quotes a poem, and the poem actually, I got a little bit of background on it. It's called "Jenny Kissed Me," and it's by Lee Hunt. And the poem goes like this: Jenny kissed me when we met, jumping from the chair she sat in. Time, you thief, who love to get sweets into your list. Put that in. Say I'm weary, say I'm sad. This is what Ben quotes. Say that health and wealth have missed me. Say I'm growing old, but add, Jenny kissed me. So he quotes from a poem, and he tells her that in the episode. And just the poem's background and so forth. It just, when you look it up, it just makes it a little more uncomfortable for me. But we'll move on from that. And so there's a conflict that emerges, right? Not only the conflict between Jenny and Aunt Agnes, which Aunt Agnes is kind of painted as a villain in this episode, which I don't really think there's anything villainous about her, in the sense that
she said, "Oh, you're going to bed without a supper."
Well, she's trying to protect Jenny.
Well, she calls her a gutter snipe,
a strange man. That's what any parent would do. Again, I'm just going along with you. If your kid was constantly in the company of an older person, you would take notice of that. Now, she probably didn't handle it well, and I don't know. And here's another point. In one of the scenes in the kitchen, it looks like there's a beer can, which would have been right.
Appropriate
to sort of suggest that she's drinking alcohol, on the set in the 60s would probably not be favorable.
Do you know what a gutter snipe is?
No, I don't.
Okay, because she calls Jenny, I believe, the gutter snipe. So
Did you look it up?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So a gutter snipe is an old-fashioned and now somewhat offensive term for a street urchin or a poor, neglected child. It's a derogatory way to refer to someone from the lowest social class, especially a child who lives or wanders around in the streets. The term has been used since the 19th century to describe a street corner broker or a person who gathers rags from gutters.
Certainly wouldn't be commendable for her to call her that.
Exactly.
Let's put our imaginary caps on here. I think Aunt Agnes has been shouldered with a burden. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say maybe Jenny's parents have passed.
Well, that's what I was saying. You do not know. That was one of my questions to you. Where is Jenny's parents? It never says.
Right. No,
did they leave her because she had a disability and they didn't want to take care of her?
That would be one plausible explanation. So no, I wouldn't give Aunt Agnes any credit for how she talked to Jenny, but you see her mask fall when Jenny is injured later and she's about to die, right? Her emotions come to the surface. I thought she did a great job. I thought
she did a really good job.
Nancy Culp did a great job in her acting in this episode. But you can see that later on in the episode that she really does care for her, but she's an angry woman, possibly because she's strapped with the burden of caring for this young girl who has a disability, and that's made her bitter. We don't know.
Maybe she couldn't have children of her own.
Possibly.
That could be another explanation.
Yeah. So going back, where are we? Forgot I left off. So the conflict here is introduced. I think it's introduced in the second act. There are two mysterious men in suits, and they begin asking around the town about an escaped criminal, right? Who fits old Ben's description. Now, these two men really don't. Do they even have any? They do have dialogue later in the episode, but they're really ominous. And they come into the apartment and they begin to search for old Ben after they talk to Aunt Agnes. And so, of course, Aunt Agnes would think that this guy's a criminal, that he fits the bill, like these guys are looking for him. So in Act 2, the rising tension escalates even more, and Jenny discovers that old Ben is not just magical, he's actually an alien and a fugitive from another world where he was a beloved ruler, and he was actually forced to flee from political enemies.
I thought it was funny here where Jenny asked him, she said, Ben, why are those two men after you? And he's like, oh, I did something bad. And she goes, what'd you do? She said, you rob a bank? He's like, no. He's like, did you kill someone? He's like, no. She said, you're a communist.
Right.
I thought that was
Definitely
funny.
Old world dialogue. But Ben says in regards to Jenny, he's going to let her in on a little secret. He says, you've been very good at letting me keep my secrets. Now I'm going to tell you one of them. You see, I'm not actually a resident of this world. And this is at the point, earlier though, Ben shapeshifts, he turns into a mouse, and then he goes, into Jenny's shirt and hides from the two men who are, seeking two assassins or whoever.
Men in Black.
Yeah, they seem like that. So the kind of a turning point in the episode, the men in suits confront old Ben, revealing that they are emissaries from his home planet, and they were sent to bring Ben back. And I think he was like a ruler. His rulership was for like 5,000 years or something, right? And he only got through like 1,000 years, and he wanted to leave or whatever. I don't remember exactly the numbers on that, but there's an emotional conflict here because old Ben doesn't want to return as he enjoys his simple life and loving connection with Jenny. And Jenny is devastated at the thought of losing him. And then finally, we'll just skip ahead to Act 3 because I don't have a whole lot of notations inside the acts unless, Jimbo, you have anything else you want to add?
No, you're doing a fine job.
So Act 3, we have our climax and resolution and final twist. So to avoid capture, old Ben uses his shape-shifting ability to trick his emissaries and stages a clever escape, really.
As a fly.
Yeah, like as a fly. Exactly right. And then the resolution, Jenny mysteriously disappears as well. And it's revealed at the end that old Ben took her with him, having healed her and made her his companion in space. And then it turns out, like old Ben is not really old. That's at the very end of the episode. That's kind of the final twist. The emissaries realize that they've been outsmarted, and Rod Serling's closing narration reflects on kindness, loneliness, and the universal need for love and connection. And the main twist is kind of like Jenny becomes a twin at the end, and we don't know who Jenny is, and we don't know who old Ben is because he's kind of like cloned himself as Jenny, and then they disappear into his world, and then we're left with just a picture of a young old Ben and Rod Serling sitting on a bed in a bedroom. And that's the other thing. I think one person explained it like, how would Aunt Agnes feel? Well, I missed an important part here. There's like a special tool that the emissaries have, and they use on old Jenny. Well, I was going to say, kind of like Men in Black.
Well, I was going to say you skipped that whole entire part where Ben heals her, right, with his little twirly thing.
Yeah,
and he turns into a fly and he goes out the window or whatever.
Right.
Then Jenny runs down the stairs, and as she's going down the stairs, those two guys walk in.
They reverse,
and they're like, "What happened, Jenny? Where is he?" She's like, "I don't know, and I wouldn't tell you."
Right.
And so she's going out the front door, and the one guy pulls out a twirly thing just like Ben had. And the one guy's like, "No, don't." He's like, "It's the only way." So he zaps her with it,
her.
and she falls to the ground. And this is where the next scene you see her up in the bed, and the doctor comes in and said, look, her leg is fine, but she's going to die.
Right.
And this is where you see the heartfelt from her aunt.
Yeah.
And this is where basically, Ben comes back to heal her, and this is where the final scene takes place, where he's like, just give me a minute with her. I'll go with you guys peacefully, I promise. And when they come back in the door, there's the two Jennies.
Right. Yeah, that's how we end the episode. And let's jump into some trivia. You want to go first on some trivia? I see you got some notes over there.
Look at that, handwritten notes.
Yeah, I like it.
But, one thing I think we need to remember is Charles Beaumont. He was a fantastic writer, okay? But what I found out from this episode specifically is that he was suffering from a mysterious illness. He was later diagnosed as early onset Alzheimer's-like symptoms, which would eventually cut his career short.
Yeah, he passed away pretty early, right?
Right. So, I mean, can you imagine what we would have got with him if he would have lived longer?
Yeah, I want to say he died in his late 40s or something like that.
I always take, between him and Richard Matheson, they're fantastic.
Yeah.
But I wanted to throw that out there, too. So, Eric, you can talk about some trivia before I dive into my final overall thoughts and feelings,
Okay, we'll
because
save that
that's
for
what
the
most
end.
of my notes are.
Okay, I've got some questions for you two to ponder and noodle on. So let's start with the trivia.
Noodle.
Yeah, Jenny's bedroom is it's adorned with two photos of the Chicago White Sox players. Two White Sox players. They have been previously misidentified as shortstop Louis Aparciaro. I can't pronounce his name. Aparciaro, a sports hero of Charles Beaumont's. So the shortstop from the White Sox was a sports hero because Beaumont was from Chicago. That was his hometown. However, the players' uniforms date to the mid-1930s. These pictures are on the wall, not the late 50s when Aparciaro played. The lower portrait is actually that of right-handed White Sox pitcher Monty Stratton. Stratton accidentally shot himself while hunting and lost his leg as a result.
Wow.
Now this is going to make the connection to Jenny because he lost his leg. He battled back after injury to pitch in the minor leagues despite having an artificial leg. Monty Stratton would have been an obvious inspiration for Jenny, who also lost her use of one of her legs. A biopic about him starring James Stewart was released in 1949, and it was titled The Stratton Story. So that'd be something interesting to look up, Jimmy Stewart. And
That
the
was
Stratton
one of my
Story.
favorites.
So both pictures are, in fact, of Monty Stratton. So we had a deep dive on that trivia piece, but I thought that was
a
interesting.
really good piece of trivia there.
Yeah. So this is, again, we've talked at length about this, but this is one of four occasions in which features the Beverly Hillbillies 1962 television show. Four actors appeared in the Twilight Zone. In the case of Jenny's aunt, Mrs. Gann, is portrayed by Nancy Culp, as Jimbo alluded to earlier, who also went on to play Jane Hathaway, the assistant to the Clampett's banker, Mr. Drysdale. Drysdale was played by Raymond Bailey, who appeared as the doctor in the Twilight Zone episode Escape Clause. Beverly Hills star Buddy Epson, Jed Clampett, he appeared in the episode Prime Mover. We already covered that one in season 2. And Donna Douglas, as Ellie Mae Clampett, featured in the classic episode Eye of the Beholder, which we also covered in season 2. Susan Gordon had reported for wardrobe fittings on July 20th. That was one of my favorite roles. I think Jimbo talked about this earlier. If not my favorite, Gordon related years later, I got to run with a prince and I got to be a twin at the end. I always wanted to be a twin. After viewing the rough cut of this episode, Houghton and Serling felt that the opening scene required something more than just kids in a baseball field. On January 30th, 1962, now this is interesting, Ralph Nelson directed a helicopter shot of the two ball fields, or a helicopter shot of the ball fields, for the opening scene. The helicopter was rented from Fred Bowen's helicopter company at Worldwide Hangar near Skyways. Jack Glass was on board, pointing the camera straight down and photographing a baseball game in action. The aerial shot did not use actors in a field. It was a real game going on in the city. So that shot was an actual real game. And Joe Rue was the assistant cameraman on board assisting Glass.
I wonder if they had to get permission to use it.
Yeah, I don't know. In the days of, we have all these drones and stuff.
Right.
Aerial shots are pretty common, but back then it's interesting. They had to actually rent a physical helicopter
Right.
just to go and get that shot.
But I'm just saying, as far as, hey, can you imagine just sitting down with your family one night and you turn on the Twilight Zone? You've been waiting all week and you turn it on.
Hey, that's me.
Hey, this is our city. Oh, wait, that's me.
Yeah, that'd be interesting to know. I got one goof. Jenny's bedside clock reads 6:10 before the doctor is called, and then 6:45 when the doctor examines her, and then back to 6:10 as the doctor leaves the room. So a little mistake there, but no biggie. Moving on to questions and observations. Jimbo, go ahead. Tell me.
No, go ahead. Let's get your questions and observations out of the way before I wrap it up, or I give my...
So these are just observations to start off with. This is where I lean. Like, obviously the episode weighs heavily on childlike innocence and adult cynicism. The relationship between Jenny and Old Ben highlights the purity of childlike wonder and trust. I get that. I can still, two things can be true at the same time, though. It is still cringeworthy, especially this one. It didn't date very well for me. Like it didn't age well. Excuse me.
Well, let me ask you a question. So if you saw this back when the Twilight Zone marathons were going on, the thoughts you're having now, you would have had no connection to that back then. Neither one of us would.
Well, they wouldn't have run Twilight marathons. You're talking about
when we were young. No, when we were younger.
Well, of course, we have different perspectives.
Exactly.
But, there were adults watching back then too. So, I mean, surely that's the thing I don't get. Think about all the people who had to view it, the editors, the audio person, all of it passed through how many sets of eyes, and nobody was like, I don't know. I have a hard time believing that nobody, like, it didn't get red flagged at all. But that's just my opinion. Now, here's another one this is from ChatGPT. We see Old Ben as we see Old Ben as a Christ-like figure because he heals the sick, performs miracles, protects the innocent, and ultimately is resurrected in a sense by escaping death and capture. That one's a stretch for me.
Yeah.
That's a little bit of a stretch. I could see how someone might take that. The third observation would be escapism and fantasy. Jenny's limp, and it's difficult for her. Her home life is very difficult, which makes her susceptible to Old Ben's offerings. Right? He suggests a fantastical alternative to reality, which is not only desirable but might be necessary for Jenny. Right? Maybe let's go a step further. Maybe she lost her parents, and she has this permanent leg injury, this disability. So maybe Old Ben is just a figment of her imagination that helps her escape the realities of the trials of her life. That's just one observation. Another one is authority and power. The emissaries represent lawful authority yet lack compassion. The show challenges the idea that legality and morality are the same, favoring empathy over duty. So that's one observation that someone has made. And then finally, sci-fi as an allegory. Beneath the alien and space travel elements lies a story about loneliness, connection, and finding one's place in universal human concerns wrapped in a sci-fi metaphor. And I can kind of see that. The humanness, displayed through sci-fi and what does Rod say? Through fantasy and sci-fi, right? That those are two main elements. One YouTuber quipped this episode as "Leave this fugitive on the run." In regards to this episode, he said it wasn't worth his time. He said, "Just leave this fugitive on the run." He didn't give a very high marks. And I talked about this a little bit earlier. I don't think Agnes is necessarily a villain here. She takes note of the sketchy relationship with Old Ben and tries to protect Jenny. I believe that. She seems really rough and uncaring, but the facade fades as she becomes emotional when Jenny's life is in jeopardy. You can kind of see that play out. And I've got a couple questions, but you want to go ahead and give your...
You want me to go ahead and give my wrap up?
I want to hear your point of view.
All right. So first off, let me say this is before I go into my feelings of this episode, I'm gonna state this at the beginning. So the picture of Old Ben at the end of this, it kind of appears he's around 19 years old, like a senior picture, if you will. Jenny is obviously a 12-year-old girl.
Can I just jump in real quick? The episode would have been better, in my opinion. It wouldn't have been as cringeworthy
if
old Ben was 12 and she was 12.
Right.
That would sit a lot better. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Right. So it's still weird seeing Ben call her his best girl, his only true love. Okay, it is weird. And Jenny's calling him her boyfriend. Eric's alluded to this several times throughout this episode. He's often seen carrying her around, obviously because of her leg, but then you see her sitting on his lap. If you think about it, it can get really uncomfortable really quick. Okay. However, let me move over to my other page. This story is beautifully told. Okay. It's like the childlike innocence of this episode, as you stated. I think it's really, really well done. I think that the love that the king is showing to the kids, I think it warms his heart. Not every old guy is a creepy old guy. There are some guys out there that just, Eric, if you've ever worked with kids in church, maybe an after-school function, especially in today's society, kids come from a broken family.
Agreed.
And all they want is somebody to talk to them and just show them kindness and love that they may not have at home. And I think that's why Jenny is so willingly to go with Ben at the end of the episode, because she's not had that kind of love and support in her life, even from her aunt. You can see early on, her aunt just yells at her, calls her a gutter snipe for crying out loud. You see her drinking. And I think Ben makes her feel welcome and warm. I love this episode. I think this episode is really underrated, especially on IMDb. That's why I'm giving it a 9 out of a 10.
Oh boy.
I think it's well done. I think it's, it comes together. Usually when we see Twilight Zone episode, it's something, the twist is so dramatic and it's it's creepy. It leaves you with that feeling, you know what I mean? Like, wow, it's an alien. This, it's an alien, but it's a nice alien. You know what I mean? I love this episode. I think the story is beautifully told. I think because this was shot, 60 years ago now.
Times have changed.
Exactly. Times have changed. And I think when we go back and we look with the goggles on now, that of the information we have now, and we try to apply it to an episode like this, obviously your views are going to be skewed. Where the episode could have been completely innocent and written as innocent, but the views and some of the happenings that has happened in the world today, I think skews our views of something that was told innocently back then. And that's where I stand with this episode. I had to look at it from not all the crazy knowledge and social media and news and all that's coming out today. Not that stuff wasn't going on back then either. It's just more prominent in today's world and views. So I like this episode.
Yeah. And it was told from an idealized Americana in 1960. I could see how that would pass, but yeah, there are a lot of, again, I'm not going to beat that dead horse, but there are a lot of things that stick out in this episode, but I appreciate that review. I've got a couple questions and then I'll throw my final rating on this.
What, you're 3 out of 10?
3 out of 10? No, just 2. Was it ethical for old Ben to take Jenny with him? Right. And here's why. All that's left is a picture of some strange dude for Aunt Agnes and a letter. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily, and, it is fantasy, right? Ethics, how much do they play into a fantasy story? But, like, he just took her off to another world and barely gave an explanation.
But you got to remember, it was Jenny's ideal because she's the one that whispered in Ben's ear.
Right.
At the end of the episode.
And again, I get that, like, if they were the same age if he was the same age on his planet, it just, that just was a little much.
Well, maybe the aunt learned her lesson, right?
What a harsh way to learn a lesson.
Well, I'm just saying.
We're just going to steal your kid and take her off to another galaxy and you'll never see her again. Well, she assumed the responsibility.
Did she?
Move on to the next question.
I don't call her responsible.
You're going to battle me on everything.
Oh, you got more.
I don't have the strength for it. So
the coffee hasn't hit this morning.
Here's question number 2. Is Jenny's life genuinely better in space, or is this just idealized. And again, we could go with the premise that this is all just in her mind. This is all fantasy of her own mind that she's got whisked away. There's a lot of different ways that we can look at it.
She could be going up like to serve man. She could be the next appetizer up there. Okay.
I like to think it as Ginny's idealized fantasy rather than this being more in the realm of reality, because then all of these issues and problems with age and awkwardness kind of fade away if it's just her imagination.
Do you think that, let me ask you this, do you think that Ben looks that way because that is Ginny's true feelings on what her Prince Charming should look like?
Old Ben?
No, young Ben.
Young Ben? I mean, I could see that potentially, right? Like, yeah, I mean, that might be one explanation.
And let me tell you this too. My great grandma and grandpa, right? I think he was 20 or 21 and she was 14 when they got married.
Of course.
Back then,
yeah, of course.
It might not have been that weird.
A lot more common back then. Sure, I will grant you that. The story suggests, what does it suggest finally about normal life on Earth? Jenny's earthly experience is shown grim and repressive. Is the show subtly critiquing societal norms, especially regarding how adults treat children? That's just something to chew on a little bit. My overall rating, I think you can probably already guess. I wasn't a big fan of this. I did try to give it its due diligence and look at it through the lens of the time. It was just a little too much for me. There was just a little too much, and that's fine. I can see both sides. I probably would leave this one, again, in the Twilight Zone. I'm going to rate it like a 7. It wasn't one of my favorites. When I watched it for the first time, I actually was like, oh, man, we're going to have to cover this, at some point, and I wasn't looking forward to covering this episode. It wasn't one of my favorites.
Oh, kind of like me for next episode.
Maybe. Which strikes me as odd. Well, we'll get to that in a second. On our next episode, we'll just go ahead and roll that out. The next episode, the next time we record, the episode's entitled The Little Girl Lost. So stay tuned. And Jimbo, you can wrap this bad boy up, and we'll get on to the next episode. So stay with us for next time. And you can make your own assessment and your own rating as you listen.
So, Bond, you're going to have to back me up on this episode if you hear this. So, well, you can follow us on the social medias. We are the Tragedy Cinema Podcast. Eric and I are both in the Facebook group if you want to reach out to us. But I think that this episode's coming to a close. Eric, do you ever get on TikTok to get it going?
I do not have a TikTok account.
Wasn't your daughter going to be like our official TikTok person? Or did you never ask her?
Oh, wait. I probably should ask her that. We'll be working on that. Stay tuned. I thought Kyle was our official guy, but...
Well, Kyle will be leaving, so...
Yeah, things have changed. Yeah, maybe I'll have to check with her and see if we can pull that off.
Right. So with that being said, I think this episode's coming to a close, and that's a wrap.
And cut.
Mrs. Gann will be in for a big surprise when she finds this under Jenny's pillow. Because Mrs. Gann has more temper than imagination. She'll never dream that this is a picture of old Ben as he really looks. And it will never occur to her that eventually her niece will grow up to be an honest-to-goodness queen somewhere in the Twilight Zone.